Hey, my name's John. I'm going to be giving you your first speech. So some of you last week maybe heard I did a speech about investing in a gold stock, the world's greatest opportunity. I'm sure some of you guys rolled your eyes. Why would I invest in gold? And actually our question of the day, I asked, what's a good investment decision that you all are doing? So today I thought I'd give a picture of a speech on the big picture. I'm kind of a big picture guy. Some of you may notice. Sometimes I miss the details, but I think I get the big picture pretty good. And I've been studying the economy and business for maybe the last 20 years or so, maybe before some of you were even in high school. So I think I have a few good things to say. So who here thinks the economy is doing well?
I think
It's okay, not bad. Well, what if I told you the U.S. economy and the world's economy is in uncharted territory? Tim, what would you think about that? You'd be wild, right?
wow.
Well, the fact is, in some ways, the world's economy is in uncharted territory. I'll just give you a few reasons why. The main reasons is debt. Now, we all remember 2008. Remember, this is the big picture. 2008, we had a financial crash, and many countries in the world had a big crash, right? You all remember?
Yeah.
Anyway, many people think the reason why we had the crash was there was too much debt. So a lot of the banks had a lot of debt. A lot of homeowners had a lot of debt. And actually, what the world's different banks and governments and blah, 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 what they decided to do to cure the 2008 financial crisis was actually to print more debt. And it's worked pretty good so far. 10 years later, most of you agree the economy's pretty good. Everything seems good, but maybe, just maybe, it's not quite as good as it seems. I'll just give you some examples of why things might be out of whack, but we don't really know or even understand why. I just read in the paper yesterday that, I don't want to get too technical, but in Europe they have a lot of, like U.S. government has bonds. They give issue bonds, and maybe they get 2 or 3%. Or companies issue bonds to raise money. Now in Europe, where I think the financial problems were a bit worse than here, in Europe they have a lot of negative bonds, where countries or companies issue bonds and they actually pay a negative rate, which means the people that buy those bonds are guaranteed to lose money. And now, when I said I read something in the paper a few days ago, actually now in Europe, there are junk bonds, which usually are bonds issued by companies that aren't in good financial condition. And there's junk bonds with a negative interest rate. So people are actually investing in companies that are really not even that good. They're buying their junk bonds guaranteed to lose money. So why has this happened? Well, a lot of it is connected to, like I said, beginning in 2008, the world tried to solve the financial crisis of having too much debt by printing more debt. So what they did was in Europe and in the US, our government, US here, Europe over there, they ended up buying a lot of debt from banks and a lot of their own debt, which what they wanted to do was get the interest rate as low as possible. Because when the interest rate is really low, Sophia, people can buy more homes. People that owe money, if you have a credit card, you pay less interest. So the fact is a lower interest rate spurs the economy forward, which has worked well, as we all agree the economy is good, but at the same time the debt has increased. So if you look at the US, and remember, in the back of your mind, this whole speech is about the big picture. So if you and I'm just pointing out different things that might cause trouble down the road, or maybe why things are not as good as they think. In the US, we have currently, I think, Tim, around 20 trillion in debt, is that right?
Something like that.
It's about 20 trillion in debt. And I think currently we're on track to add $1 trillion in debt every year. And I think the whole budget is on 3 or 4 trillion. But my point is, usually if we'll take the US as an example, it all depends how big your economy is. If the economy gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then a large debt really doesn't matter. But the fact is, just for an example, Obama, I think when he was president, when he started as president, U.S. had 10 trillion debt. I think the government total debt doubled from 10 to 20 trillion. But the problem is, if the economy doesn't grow big enough or fast enough to service the debt, eventually something has to happen. Say in 5 or 10 years, right now I think the U.S., whatever, they pay interest on the debt as a certain percentage of the economy. But eventually, if the debt becomes bigger and bigger, things become unstable. So although things appear well, just like in 2008 and 2007, I remember I bought my condo in 2008 and the financial crash, the real estate and financial crash had already started. But in 2006 and 2007, did anyone really think there was going to be a big crash? I would guess most of us probably thought things were pretty good. Yet what happened? You know, unemployment rate went up to what, 15 or 18% or something. We had a big crowd here because a lot of people were out of work, and it just came out of the middle of nowhere. And just one other thing, just another thing to think about. I remember giving the speech a year ago on the Federal Reserve. They were raising rates, and I was like, the Federal Reserve, do they really know what they're doing? And the fact is, many people think the Federal Reserve, which controls money supply and interest rates, they really don't know what they're doing. They're just bureaucrats. So I gave a speech a year ago where the Federal Reserve had it all planned out. They're going to raise rates 3 years, 3 times this year, 3 times next year, 3 times this year. And I was like, how do they really know? They didn't predict a crash in 2008. And sure enough, just 6 months or a year ago, they said they would be raising interest rates 3 times this year because they're trying to raise rates higher to get the economy back on like a normal type of thing, away from this zero interest rate policy we've been at. Tim, when we were kids, interest rates were at 5%. But now they're going to be cutting rates probably next week. So the thing why a lot of this matters, one other thing, is the stock market. Everyone thinks the stock market is good, and a lot of people have made money, even my sister in Apple, and there's a lot of great companies. But the fact is, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the stock market. That if you just take a look to see what's, I'll just give you a few examples. Beyond Meat, has anyone heard of that? It's a stock, it IPO'd, they make vegetarian hamburgers. It's like meat, but it's not meat. Whatever, it's a great product. They have a few $100 million in sales. All of a sudden, this Beyond Meat becomes some crazy stock, and it's gone up 20 times, and the company is worth $15 billion, yet they have a few $100 million in sales, and they lose maybe $50 million a year. It doesn't make any sense. A lot of they had pot stocks, the marijuana stocks, went up 10 or 20 times, and 6 months later, the stock goes back down. My point is, low interest rates have created a lot of bubbles, a lot of financial instability. And in closing, the last thing with the big picture is these low zero rates. It just makes business people do a lot of bad decisions. When money is really cheap, on a whole, business and people make bad decisions. When you make bad decisions, the economy is not as productive. Your life is not going to be as productive. You're going to have more debt. You're going to make bad choices. And sooner or later, you have to pay the piper. So I'll leave it at that. Just give you some things to think about for my big doomsday speech. Thank you.